Shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters of the Hebrew Israelite family. This is Brother Uriah from the Hebrew Israelite Home Bible Study Group of Pensacola, Florida. Tonight we're going to be bringing you the first of a series of lessons. Tonight's lesson is called For God So Loved the World, Part 1. From John 3:16, For God So Loved the World. Let us begin. Opening prayer. Holy Father Yah, we give thanks to you for all the many, many things that you have done for us. You have given us the law, the statutes, and the commandments. You have given us the prophets. You have given us the Messiah, who has given us his blood as a living sacrifice for the redemption of sins. You've given us the opportunity to enjoy eternal life. So we thank you so much, Father Yah. And I ask the blessings of all my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, and of those Gentiles who will obey the law, the statutes, and the commandments, and be grafted in to the holy olive tree. We thank you for life. We thank you for this opportunity to share your word. So let us begin. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but the world through him might be saved. Okay, now what does this mean? Does this mean that Father Yah loves everyone, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, no matter if they are pagans or Gentiles or atheists or agnostics? Is this verse teaching that all people are loved and that Yahusha, aka Jesus, died on the cross for all of their sins? Well, this is what is generally taught by Christianity, but is this a true interpretation? Christianity has taught that everyone is included within this, that Holy Yah sent his Son to die on the cross for everyone, and that we all are united in that one means of redemption. But the question is this true, or have we been deceived through Christianity? Let us turn to Matthew chapter 15, verses 22 through 24. Verse 22. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she cries after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Let me say that once again. Verse 24. But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So when we ask the question, who was the Messiah sent for, The answer is clearly for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's what the scripture says. And it does not say that he was sent for everyone. He was sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Turn with me, if you will, to Matthew 10, verses 2 through 6. Matthew 10, verses 2 through 6. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. These 12 Yahusha sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They're saying the same thing here as was said in in Matthew 15. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So who was it that the 12 apostles was sent to by the Messiah himself, by command? They were sent to the house of Israel and given explicit instructions as a command not to go into the way of the Gentiles. And we should know that the Gentiles originally are described as those who are the descendants of Japheth. We'll find this in the book of Genesis, chapter 10. They are originally defined as the Gentiles. Now, later on, there are other groups of people who are going to be added to that group known as Gentiles, such as the Ishmaelites and the descendants of Keturah. They are all added to, reckoned as Gentiles. And so here we have the Messiah by way of command telling his 12 apostles, do not go to these people. Do not go to these Gentiles, but go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So if they're going to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, then how could it be possible that they were going to everyone while at the same time not going to the Gentiles? That's false teaching. You couldn't possibly be going to everyone where he clearly tells you don't go to the Gentiles. And the Gentiles are overwhelmingly the vast number of people on planet Earth. Why would he say don't go to the Gentiles? Well, the Gentiles weren't given the law. The Gentiles weren't given any instructions by Yah to do anything or not to do anything. Yah never came to them, rescued them from slavery, and gave them instructions on how to conduct their lives. They were free to do whatever came into their minds. Today, you call it freedom. So who are these Gentiles that Yahusha, aka Jesus, gave explicit instructions to his apostles not to go into their lands? do not go into the lands of the Gentiles. So who are these Gentiles? Genesis chapter 10 makes this very, very clear who they are. Genesis chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. Now, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dudanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nations. Okay, now that we know who the original Gentiles were, then we can peer down a little deeper into their background to see who they became. The sons of Japheth, again, were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Tubal, Meshech, Tyrus, and Javan. Well, Scripture tells us that these people set up nations and languages according to their own names. The people who were the descendants of Gomer, for example, became known as the Gomerites. Now, one of the things that we have to learn, keep in mind, is that the Greeks, particularly the Romans and Europeans today, have a real bad habit of changing the original names of people and places to a name of their language, oftentimes totally discarding the original name. We can give many examples of that today. In this particular case, we have the descendants of Gomer, who were known as the Gomerites. But their names were changed by the Greeks, and they became known as the Galatians. Yes, those same Galatians that you see in the New Testament. The book of Galatians. That's who they're talking about. Though they were the descendants of Gomer. Such as the case with Magog. The descendants of Magog were called the Magogites, but their names were changed to the Scythians, again, by the Greeks. Madai, they became known as the Medians or the Medes. We're familiar with them when we recall the people who overthrew Babylon. They were called the Media Persians, were they not? The descendants of Madai. You have the descendants of Tubal. They were called the Thobelites or the Iberes. Then you have Meshech, also known as Moshech. They became known biblically as the Cappadocians. Look that up in the Bible. That's who they are. They are the Gentile descendants of Japheth through his son Meshech. Then there's Tyrus, became known as the Cyrasians or the Thracians, and Javan. Javan is one of the most popular of these sons, these Gentile sons of Japheth. They became known as the Greeks, also the Ionians. Okay, now, when we drill down a little deeper still into the second generation, that is from Japheth to Gomer, and now the children of Gomer. The children of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Rephath, Togarmah. The children of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dudanim. The descendants of Meshech, Magog, Tyrus, Madai, and Tubal, for whatever reason, are not listed within the scriptures that we readily have available. But I'm sure they're probably somewhere being hidden, as so much has been hidden from us. So when we go back to Gomer, the son of Japheth, his son was Ashkenaz, and these people are very important because today's people who call themselves Jews, over 90% of these people claim to be descendants of Ashkenaz. Thus, they are called Ashkenazi Jews. Now, this takes us into another subject matter, but I don't know how you can become an Ashkenazi Jew and be a biblical Jew, since the biblical Jews were descendant from Shem, not Japheth. But that's another story and another study for another time. But we will be coming back to that one for sure. So these Ashkenaz, these descendants of Ashkenaz, the grandchild of Japheth, were also known as Ashkenazi, Ashkenonians, and they were called the Rhegians by the Greeks. Remember, these Greeks and Romans, and they are famous for changing the names. We won't get into that right now. Then you have the grandchild called Rephath. They became known as the Riphians, the Paphlonians, and then there's Togarmah. And then you can see through each one of these. We're not going to go through all of them. You can read them yourself. Some I'm going to stop and talk about because they're just too important. One of which is the descendant of Javan, who was called Kittim. Now, these people are very, very important in the study of the Hebrew Israelites because they became known as the Greeks, and later on they were associated with the Romans. You have the Dudanim, and so here are some more Greeks. So we see that under Dudanim, they are also known as Rhodes, the people of Rhodes by the Greeks. And then the others that we have talked about already. These are the original, but not the only, Gentiles of scriptures. Now let's take another. We're going to take a look at where these people resided. When we recall that the Genesis chapter 10 verse 5 referred to the lands of the Gentiles, when we take a look at it from a geographical point of view and see the distribution of these people who were the descendants of Japheth, a very clear pattern develops. In this slide, we can see the now familiar names: Dudanim, Greece. Those were the descendants of Javan. There's Dudanim. Over here in general, we have overall the descendants of Japheth. This is to the north, primarily, of the Mediterranean Sea. You have the Ashkenaz, the Phrygians. Here's Gomer and Rephath. There's some more Gomerites, so to the north of the Black Sea. And then there's Rephath further to the north still. You hear there's Scythians up here between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Magog, Rosh, that ancient name that became Russia. Here you have the Caucasus Mountain range. There are a range of mountains called the Caucasus Mountains. When these descendants of Japheth resided there, as they were moving primarily north and west, they were living in this area called the Caucasus Mountains. Thus, they are called Caucasians. Caucasians. This is a part of Asia. Caucasians or Caucasians. That's where that name comes from. Then you have Madai, and then you have Togarmah, Tubal, and the rest of the descendants of Japheth. But we can see without a doubt that the distribution of these populations were primarily to the north of the Mediterranean Sea, extending to the south of the Black and the Caspian Sea, and then moving north and westward. These are the people who became known eventually as Europeans. We also see the distribution of the descendants of Ham, although we're not primarily concerned with them in this particular study. We see the Hamites, the sons of Ham. They occupied the land called Mizraim, or what the Greeks called Egypt. And then there's Nubia and Seba and Cush, Ethiopian. You have the land of the inheritance of the people who were of the descendants of Shem. You know, Joktan and the Arabians and Ishmael, which were really mixtures of the Shemites and the Hamites. And we see this distribution of the people in this slide. All right, let's go to the next. Here we have another view of the distribution of these original Gentiles. Here you have Ashkenaz. Notice that they're associated more with the area that of modern Germany. Gomer, that would be around what we would call France. Tarshish, you see them in what would be Spain, Portugal. There's Dudanim down in Sicily and Italy, and there's Javan, which would be around the Greece. Then you have Tyrus and Gomer and Tubal, Elisha and Kittim. Kittim originally started out in the Cyprus area, that island called Cyprus. And there's more Ashkenaz, Rephath, Togarmah, Madai, Meshech, Magog. Magog sounds familiar, should be ringing a bell. Gog and Magog, which is going to play such a tremendous role in the later times of these Gentiles. And then there's Tubal, another view of their population distribution. Although they have extended all over the world today, as Scripture says that they would. He said he would enlarge Japheth, and he did. They're all over everywhere for now. And here's yet another view of the distribution of these people who were known as the Gentiles. We see them here primarily in the letters in green. This would be at the earlier stage of their distribution, as we see that they are pretty much still centered in the Mesopotamia area. Remember that the ark is said to have gone down at the or settled at the Mount Ararat, which is in Turkey. And so from there, people started to disperse after the flood. And so you see here it has Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is that descendant of Gomer, who was descendant of Japheth. These Ashkenaz, these are the predecessors of the what we call today the Ashkenazi Jews. This is where they came from. And if they came from here, descended from Ashkenaz, who was descendant from Gomer, who was the son of Japheth, then obviously these could not have possibly have been the biblical Jews, because the biblical Jews are descendant from Shem, not Japheth. Okay. Now we can see through the previous slides that the children of Japheth, who were originally tagged as Gentiles, occupied the northern regions of the Mediterranean and the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and that they moved north from there into lower parts of what we call today Russia, and to the west, and to what we would call today Europe. So clearly these people, these descendants of Japheth, are identified with whom we would call today Europeans. Of that, there's little doubt. But with that goes the reality is that the Messiah told the 12 apostles not to go into the way of the Gentiles. So therefore, the 12 apostles were not to originally, at that time, go into these areas. They would get there, but originally it was not. And they were not to go there. And the reason for that is because they were not to receive the salvation first. Those who received salvation first were the Hebrew Israelites. Yahusha HaMashiach died on the cross for Israel. The shedding of his blood was for Israel and no one else. Now, others would be saved through that, but the actual shedding of the blood on the cross was not for everybody. Here we see a depiction of some of the descendants of Japheth, who have other titles. They're called Europeans, they're called Caucasians, but they're also clearly identified in scriptures as the first Gentiles. As I said before, they're not the only Gentiles. There are going to be other groups of people who are going to be added to that category of Gentiles. And very interestingly, we should see that we'll see that it's not based upon race. So if Yah is not discriminating based upon race, then we have no justification whatsoever in discriminating against race. And one of the things that a lot of Hebrew Israelites need to learn, Holy Yah can allow anyone he chooses to come into his kingdom. We see in scriptures that 2/3 of Hebrew Israelites are not going to make it into the kingdom. So when he says, as straight is the gate and narrow is the path leads unto righteousness, and few there be that find it, that applies to Hebrew Israelites also. Because there is a concept, although some deny it, of spiritual Israel. There's Israel of the flesh, but there is spiritual Israel. And all who are of the flesh are not going to be making it into the kingdom. What does Scripture say? all Israel is not of Israel. So these Gentiles that we see here, they're going to have their means of salvation, but it's not by the Messiah dying on the cross. They have another but related way in which salvation is going to come to them. First, let's take a look at some of these other Gentiles. Okay, let's take a look at First Esdras chapter 8, verses 68 through 70. Here we're going to see where the scriptures bear witness that there are others who are considered Gentiles besides the descendants of Japheth. Okay, let's take a look at what we have here. First Esdras chapter 8, verses 68 through 70. Now when these things were done, the rulers came unto me and said, the nation of Israel, the princes, the priests, and the Levites have not put away from them the strange people of the land, nor the pollutions of the Gentiles, to wit, of the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, and Moabites, Egyptians, and Edomites. For both they and their sons have married with their daughters, and the holy seed is mixed with the strange people of the land. And from the beginning of this matter, the rulers and the great men have been partakers of this iniquity. Okay, let's go back. We see that there are these other groups of people who are added to the category of Gentiles. The Canaanites, who are Hamites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, those are Hamites, and the Moabites, those are descendants of Shem, Shemites, the Egyptians, more Hamites, and Edomites. Edomites are Shemites. All right, so here we have now all three categories of the descendants of Noah: Japheth, Ham, and Shem, all three represented in the category of people of the people group known as Gentiles. And it's common sense to tell you this is not based upon race. You've got the descendants of Japheth, who apparently were the white people. You've got the Egyptians. They were descendants of Ham. And as we recall from Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Ham was the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. And then we have the Edomites. Now, I know a lot of people refer to these Edomites as the whites. I'm not convinced of it. I don't believe it. No. These Edomites, this is not just white people. Did they become white? Did they? All that could is possible. Surely that's possible. But they weren't the original ones. Those had to have come from Japheth. So we have representative of all three of the descendants of Noah present here in this category called Gentiles, whom the Messiah told the 12 apostles, don't go into the land of these Gentiles. That would include them too. So when we go to the book of Jubilees, chapter 16, verses 15 through 19, we find that there are yet others who are going to be added to the category of Gentiles. Jubilees reads as follows, verse 15. And in the 6th year of the 4th week we came to Abraham to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him, as we had told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month, and found Sarah with child before us. And we blessed him, and we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 more sons, and should see them before he died, but that in Isaac should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be Gentiles, and be reckoned with the Gentiles. But from the seed of Isaac one should become a holy seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles. For he should become the portion of the Most High, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Yah, that it should be unto Yah a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a kingdom and priest and a holy nation. So here we see that Abraham was told that he is going to beget yet 6 more sons, but that those sons would all be reckoned as Gentiles. So now they're going to go over there in that little basket of Gentiles, along with Japheth and the Canaanites and the Egyptians and the Jebusites and Moab, the Moabites, and all that little group. So let's take a look and see who's getting ready to go into the category of Gentiles now. So Abraham was told that he was going to beget yet 6 more sons, and that he would live to see those sons. But those sons were going to be considered Gentiles. Even though they were directly from Abraham himself, they were to go into that little group of people called Gentiles. Genesis chapter 25. Then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua. And Jokshan begot Sheba and Dedan, and the sons of Dedan were Asherim, and Lethushim, and Lumim. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, Epher, and Hanak, and Abidah, and Eldaah. All these were the children of Keturah. All these were the descendants of Abraham and Keturah, and all of them were sent into that little happy basket of Gentiles. Even though they were descendants of Abraham himself, they were still considered Gentiles, along with Ishmael, and along with all the others of Japheth. So it was not racially based at all. There's something else going on here. And these are the ones who the Messiah told the apostles not to go into their lands. That's crystal clear. He said, do not go into the lands of the Gentiles. These are the ones who they said who they are. These are the ones who are. These are the Gentiles. These are the ones who the apostles did not go into, because it wasn't time for the Gentiles yet. Why do we say it wasn't time for the Gentiles? The reason why it wasn't time for the Gentiles, because the scriptures is clear. First unto the Jew, then unto the Gentile. That's crystal clear. First means first. It doesn't mean last. It doesn't mean second. Those who are up first are the the holy seed, Israel, they have to be receive. They have to receive the salvation that Yahusha provides by dying on the cross. First unto the Jew, then unto the Gentile. Romans chapter 1, verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God, Yah, unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Romans chapter 2, verse 9. Tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile. Romans chapter 2, verse 10. But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first, and also to the Gentile.